I'm Steve Kress, the Director of Project Puffin. Puffins have a remarkably beautiful beak. It is a specialized bill. There's really nothing else quite like it in the puffin world. Among seabirds, the puffins have this large beak. Probably it serves several functions. The beaks in general are often serve as a billboard for demonstrating the age and the sex and the health of the bird. And the puffin's beak, one can only imagine that since the beak gets these bright colors at 2 years and older, that there's a lot of message in that beak to other puffins. Our little puffin Hope has an all-gray beak at this age, which is typical for a puffin chick that's still living in its burrow. Puffins develop the bright colors on their beaks to message their age, their sex, their health. So at this point, a young puffin really has no reason to have a bright-colored beak. Little puffin Hope will carry this gray-colored beak into her first winter and will not develop a bright-colored beak until at least 2 years old. Puffins start returning back to their nesting islands when they're about 2 years old, and between the ages of 2 and 4, they spend their summers moving from between puffin islands. We've seen puffins move between islands within that are as much as 35 miles apart within a few hours. During those times when they're moving between islands, they're looking for a future nesting place and they're looking for a future mate. We're confident that puffins often pair with their future mate at age 4, sometimes establish a burrow, even build a pseudo nest, but not lay an egg. It's equivalent to an engagement period that puffins maintain for at least a year before they actually breed for the first time. Puffins are famous for having monogamous relationships. They may stay together throughout their long life of 20 or more years. Each year return to the same burrow. But if one of the parents does not survive the winter and the survivor comes back, they may not breed that summer. Usually the following year they will find a new mate and continue nesting, usually in the same nesting burrow. The burrow camera on Seal Island National Wildlife Refuge is placed in a natural rock crevice that puffins have been nesting in for many years. Puffins look soft and kind of cuddly, but I can tell you that when you hold a puffin, you've got your hands full. It takes both hands. You've got to hold on firm because the puffin is all muscle. Its legs are strong, its toes are sharp claws, and its beak has got a hook on the end that can grab you and give you a good bite. Little is known about the migrations of puffins, but what we do know is that they leave the coast of Maine in mid-August. Prior to it, just a few years ago, nothing was known about the winter movements of puffins, but we have been experimenting with little devices called geolocators, attaching these to the leg bands. We have to recapture the puffin after it's been at sea to download the information. And we only have 2 of these so far that have given us information that helps to enlighten us about the movements of puffins during their migration. One of these puffins, named Cabot, has told us that after the nesting season, he moved north into the Gulf of St. Lawrence, where he spent much of the winter, then headed south, where he wintered in the coldest seasons off the Bermuda Plateau before returning back to the Maine coast. That was the first year of travels. The device was on his legs for 2 years, and when we finally took it off, we had 2 years worth of information. Second year, Cabot headed back to the Gulf of St. Lawrence, then headed north up into the Labrador Sea, and then again back to the Bermuda Plateau before heading back to the nesting islands. So for that bird, that seems to be where Cabot went. He varied it from one year to the next. He stayed in the Northeast. He migrated north rather than south after the nesting season. That was a bit of a surprise. But we need to learn a lot more because that's just one bird, and each bird could have a different migration pattern. When the puffins are at sea, they are totally independent, living, floating on the sea surface, diving under for food, sleeping on the water, drinking salt water, excreting the excess salt out of their nostrils. And during this time, they're often far out at sea where there are not a lot of predators. Most predators are close to shore. So heading offshore is probably a pretty good idea for a seabird if you, in fact, can survive the extreme weather and be able to survive far from land. So predation is probably not a big issue for puffins far offshore, maybe one of the reasons why they go there. We do know that from banding recoveries that about 95% of the puffins, of the breeding age puffins, survive from one year to the next. Puffins nest in deep rock crevices on Seal Island where the chick is safe, and it's a safe, secure spot for about 6 weeks while the chick grows up. This gives the parents the freedom to head off to sea to find food. Again, there's mysteries at sea. We don't know where the puffins go to find their food. It could be 5, 6, or more miles out to sea to get that beak load of fish to come back. They also have to take care of themselves and find enough food to keep themselves strong. So the puffin chick stays underground, often with no parent around. But one of the things the puffin cam is showing us is that there's more time spent underground by the parent just in the burrow, sometimes preening the feathers of the chick, sometimes keeping it warm under a wing, interacting with it. And those visits, that time in the burrow, has nothing to do with providing food. Puffin chicks generally get 3 to 5 meals per day. People sometimes ask, why doesn't the baby puffin just walk out of the burrow and look around? Well, over time, those baby puffins that walked out of their burrows and looked around probably were snatched up by predators like herring gulls and blackback gulls. There's no reason to leave the burrow because the burrow is a safe place. So today, in these days, the puffins that survived are no better than to wander outside of the burrow. Puffins are famous for being able to bring back more than one fish at a time in their beak. The record is 62 small fish in a puffin's beak that was found delivering food to its young in Scotland. Our Maine puffins feed generally 3 to 6 fish at a time in their beaks. When they're collecting these fish in their beaks, what they probably are doing is flying underwater with their wings partly extended, chasing the schools of fish. Flying underwater faster than the fish can swim, they snatch up the first fish in these beak loads, press it up against the roof of their mouth with their flattened tongue. The roof of the mouth has little spines that point backward and helps to keep the fish in place. And then, while continuing to fly underwater, they see another fish, snatch it up with the lower mandible, and then slip the tongue under the second fish and press it too against the roof of the mouth. In this way, they use the tongue and the beak to snatch up additional parts of their catch. Puffins are compelling birds to watch, I think, because they have this upright walk. They are beautifully colored. They have clown-like markings on their face. And in some interesting way, I think they remind us of ourselves. That sort of jaunty walk which they have and their way of looking around at each other also sort of makes them appealing for us. Certainly they're compelling too because of their family life, which is a monogamous, caring relationship with their mate and with their young. Well, it's not always the case. The female osprey typically has a breast band across her chest, little spots and streaks, sometimes with a background color as well. The males lack this, or they don't have much of the necklace that the females show.